Hello. I'm gonna get the chat on screen here. Give me a second. Get the chat on screen here. All right, look at that. How's it going, guys? So I wasn't lying about it being a solo stream today. Justus is preoccupied. How's everybody doing? You all happy today? The Snickers man opens up today. Yeah, I'm by myself today. No Snickers. Justus made a playlist of stuff that he was going to go over today. He was trying to be here. He just, yeah, he's got something going on. Pretty important. So he's got to deal with that first. So we're going to go through some news, I guess. Do you guys want to start? I feel like we've all watched this already, but I guess we could start off with this, the Mark Carney interview with Rosemary Barton. Or do you guys want to just skip it?
Liberal leadership contender.
I've got about an hour. I can hang out until my kids are off school. So how you guys feeling about this? You want to watch it? If you guys, you probably all seen it, but we could watch it again. Hey, Robin. Thought you put him in the penalty box, Saul. Yeah. It doesn't really matter. He wasn't going to be here anyways, but yeah, he's in the penalty box. Can't hear me? Autumn says she can't hear me. Can anybody else not hear me right now? Is my audio not coming through? Switch this to... Sure, I've only seen clips. Let's watch it. Did anybody notice how he spills his water? I did hear that when I was listening to it. I didn't realize it was him spilling water. I heard something clatter on the floor. I was like, oh, that's funny. Okay. Oh, here, we're going to move this to my other monitor.
Mark Carney says he has what it takes to go toe-to-toe with U.S. President Donald Trump.
Why am I here now? Because we're in a crisis. This, for better or worse, my career, my experience prepares me for this moment.
Speaking to CBC News for the first time in this leadership race, Carney pitched himself as a steady hand who can help save the country from economic ruin.
We can't control President Trump.
I thought he did okay in this interview. I don't know if anybody else caught that one he did with the British guy and Anthony Scaramucci. I think that was a way better interview. They asked way better questions. And they go on for like an hour. I don't know if anybody remembers Scaramucci. He was in the Trump administration for like 10 days and then he got kicked out for fighting with everybody. A bunch of people were like threatening to resign if he wasn't fired and stuff.
Trump, but we can control what we do here at home to reinforce our economies.
The former central banker is promising to build new east-west pipelines, dismantle provincial trade barriers.
Oh, you're adopting that Mark Carney thing, eh, Genghis? I saw Wyatt post that. I think you guys should watch those. I feel like both of those quotes were taken a little bit disfavorably personally, but
And lower taxes if elected. Policies echoing those of Pierre Poilievre.
The unjustified threats of tariffs and 51st statehood.
I like that one, Rob. Craphead Carney. That's funny.
Of Donald Trump have united our people to defend the country we love.
Poilievre is now calling out Trump and shifting his campaign rhetoric from strictly denouncing the...
What do you guys think about Poilievre's shift to being pretty critical of the Trump administration? I think it was probably a necessary move. I don't know if he had much of a choice. I think he kind of got put between a rock and a hard place there.
The Liberals.
Everything feels broken in Canada.
To promoting the country at a Flag Day rally as it stares down an American adversary.
We will bear any burden and pay any price to protect the sovereignty and independence of our country.
O'Neill. Yeah, it was a pretty softball interview. You could tell both those guys really liked Carney, but I just thought they asked good questions. I thought it was cool that they like basically just outright asked him, what do you think about people charging you as being a globalist? And like, what are specific policy decisions that you differ with the Trudeau campaign on? Yeah, it was just, there were better questions than I've seen in a lot of interviews. I hope Poilievre goes on that podcast because they invited him on too. So I think it'd be good.
Outside the political arena, mounting U.S.-Canada tensions on display.
AJD, I don't know. That's so far unconfirmed. According to Mark Carney, that's what he says. I don't know why he would make that up, but if it did come out that he was lying about that, I think that could be a really, really damning thing to happen. I don't think that would go very well for him.
During a high-stakes hockey game.
They're going to drop the gloves right away.
As Trump's threats hit a nerve.
I think Canada is going to be a very serious contender to be our 51st state.
What some initially thought was a joke, now taken seriously.
I don't believe the administration is our friends.
After meeting...
Yeah, Genghis, to be fair, in that interview, they asked him specifically about the globalist thing. So I don't think he was just bringing it out of nowhere. He was just trying to say that the reasons that people call him a globalist are some of the reasons that he thinks that he's qualified for the job, which I wouldn't necessarily disagree with. I think it's good that he's got experience negotiating with other countries and dealing with these world leaders, right? Like Poilievre's got a lot of experience at home, but not a lot of experience abroad dealing with other people. I'm not saying that disqualifies him for it or anything, but I do think that's a point in Carney's favor.
With one of Trump's senior advisors this week, Canada's premiers were told, take what Trump says at face value. That left some of them shaken.
I came away from the week knowing this administration wants to turn the U.S. government's approach on everything upside down.
They delivered the message that he is not joking when he says the 51st state.
Polls show a tightening federal race in the wake of Trump's threats. The Liberals are inching up after being on the back foot for months. Poilievre hopes talk of putting Canada first will keep him and his party first among voters.
And we have some indications today on where the Liberal leadership race stands.
Yeah, the Carney campaign tells us he's hauled in nearly $2 million since this race kicked off last month. It's an impressive figure that's similar to what Poilievre fundraised at this stage of his leadership campaign. Carney's two main opponents, Chrystia Freeland and Karina Gould.
Apparently he's like 8 times the next person. I think Chrystia Freeland's got like 290 or 270K.
Haven't said how
Nobody
much
else
money they have on
300,
hand, but sources tell CBC News they do have enough money to pay the final entrance fee and stay.
I don't know if he said he is a globalist. He said that those are the reasons that people call him a globalist. That's how I understood it. Maybe I'm being too good faith there.
In the race. Ian?
JP Tasker in Ottawa. Let's go to CBC News chief political correspondent Rosemary Barton. And Rosie, during your talk with Carney, you got more insight into his plans and his motivation.
Yeah, Ian, Carney did flesh out a bit more some of his policies, but really the most surprising revelation was when I asked Carney why he was entering politics right now, given that he's flirted with this idea for many years. He then disclosed that in 2012, when he was governor of the Bank of Canada, he was approached by then Prime Minister Stephen Harper to become finance minister. Carney said it wasn't appropriate to go from the central bank into politics directly. Harper's former director of communications responded to this by saying Carney's not.
Yeah, Rob, it's a tough one. You know, I've thought about this a lot and how, like, is it better for them to openly accept donations from people, or is it better for them to have revenue from somewhere else, right? Like, I think that those types of donations are inevitably going to happen when there's politicians who are running for government. I'd rather have everything just be above board. I don't feel like there's any way to actually prevent people from donating to a campaign, you know?
Telling the whole story, and that Harper in no way supports Carney. The decision to disclose this piece of information right now, though, Ian's pretty interesting because the Conservatives have been obviously focusing their attacks on trying to discredit Carney, including the work he did with the Harper government during the economic crisis in 2008. So this throws a bit of a wrench, certainly, into some of that criticism.
Yeah, that is really interesting. This weekend, we saw Poilievre pivoting on his message.
Do you think he will if he did actually do it? Do you think Harper would benefit? Would it be a positive at all for his side to come out and confirm it? I feel like if he did do it, he would just not say anything.
Yeah, the Conservatives are trying to talk more about what's worrying Canadians right now, the tariffs, Donald Trump. So you heard from Pierre Poilievre on Saturday things like, we will bear any burden and pay any price to protect Canadian sovereignty. But we also heard Poilievre doubling down on the need to axe the consumer carbon tax, even though no Liberal leadership candidate supports it going forward. So
Rob,
the opposition leader trying to carve a new path and keep the supporters that he already has happy.
Rosemary Barton in Ottawa, thank you.
Thanks.
Deadline day for Liberal leadership hopefuls to hand over their final entrance fee installment that gives them the privilege of running in the race to replace Justin Trudeau. CTV's Rachel Aiello is here with who made it across the finish line. Rachel?
Sandy, all 5 hopefuls have secured the funds needed to stay in the race. But there are 2 big tests still on the horizon.
With 20 days to go, the lineup of candidates looking to replace Justin Trudeau is solidifying. Representatives from the campaigns of Mark Carney, Chrystia Freeland, Karina Gold, Frank Baylis, and Ruby Dalla have all confirmed their final entrance fee installments have been or will be made.
Robin, the evil grasshopper on Bug's Life, eh? I think he looks a little bit like a shark or something. That's I don't know. That's funny that you mentioned that though, because I brought up the US treating us like the ants and they're the grasshoppers.
By the end of the day. And while it's a 5-person race at this stage, the rival Conservatives are already honing in on who they see as the frontrunner.
The Conservatives, for all intents and purposes, have told Canadians Mark Carney is the one to beat.
It got support from...
Still working the U.S. airwaves over the weekend, today, Freeland unveiled her 10-point housing plan in a statement. Freeland is promising to cut municipal red tape and tie the number of new immigrants to the housing supply. Baylis also released on paper today his plan for Canadian energy security. Candidates will be squaring off on their stances on policies such as these in Montreal next week. The party is holding 2 leadership debates, in French first on Monday and then an English debate on Tuesday. In such a condensed race, political analysts say the candidates fighting Carney for the spotlight will have to walk a fine line.
If he is the clear frontrunner, if he may be sitting in the prime minister's chair in just 3-4 weeks and he's confronting the challenge of Donald Trump and Pierre Poilievre, how hard do you, as a Liberal rival, want to go at him now?
The party has told me that by meeting today's payment deadline, the 5 candidates will be eligible to be on the ballot and on stage for those.
Yeah, I almost wonder, they have to realize that he's probably going to win it at this point. I imagine there's some of them that are a little bit hopeful, to see what happens after the debates. But how long do they wait to drop out? Do they just stick it out until the end just to make it look like at least there was an attempt at somebody else trying to confirm? But I don't know.
Debates, which will be moderated
Seems
by
like a waste of
2
time.
former journalists. Sandy?
Has been the carbon tax championed by Trudeau and his economic advisor, Mark Carney, whose only complaint was that the tax was not high enough.
That was Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre at his Canada First rally in Ottawa on Saturday. It's clear he hasn't abandoned his criticism of the carbon tax, but he's put down the axe and he's clearly sharpening his attacks on Liberal leader candidate Mark Carney. According to pollster Nick Nanos, it's a sign that he believes Carney is headed...
I don't know. I think that his interests probably are in line with ours. I don't understand how people could... I think that if you could want a guy like Trump in charge of America, the arguments that you would use there, that they've got experience with business and negotiating and dealing with other powerful people and not bending immediately on deals and stuff. I don't know. I mean, I feel like all those boxes are checked for Carney as well.
For a coronation.
The Conservatives, for all intents and purposes, have told Canadians Mark Carney is the one to beat. Mark Carney is the one to watch. That Conservative attack does not necessarily convert into delegates and votes in an actual leadership campaign, but is probably indicative of the strength of the Carney campaign right now and the threat that it might pose for the Poilievre Conservatives.
Hey, Krypton.
So maybe this isn't a full pivot for Poilievre, but it may just be a conservative course correction. Let's bring back the front bench. Laura D'Angelo, Shakir Chambers, Alison Gifford, and Laura Stone. Shakir, what do you think of how he is sort of changing his tone now? Is he just trying to sort of really read the room, or is this just zoning in on where he thinks things are going?
I think any political party in Canada has to find a way to talk about Trump or countering Trump in some way. There's obviously a rise of nationalism in our country right now, and I think Pierre just kind of made it.
Saying she's got that Mar-a-Lago look going for her.
But I don't think he's, discarding anything that he was talking about or stood up for before. The clip you played, he addressed the carbon tax directly and what that would mean for Canadians. So I think that's still a part of his core message. I think, again, the key for the carbon tax is it has been turned into a matter of affordability for Canadians. So at the end of the day, if you want to talk about affordability and how to address affordability, in the eyes of Pierre and his team, getting rid of the carbon tax is still central to that. So you can have Trump on one side and talk about what you do to strengthen Canada, strengthen our sovereignty. At the same time, domestic issues still matter. And I would just say in our last block, we spoke about the Ontario election. If you actually look at the issues that matter to Ontarians, Trump is up there for sure, but cost of living is still the number one issue people care about. So I think at the end of the day, you can have this dual message and still resonate with Canadians without calling it, this massive pivot. You're meeting the moment where we're at right now.
But Laura D'Angelo, what does this mean when you consider that you have the bulk of the candidates who are running?
I just don't think he's as ideologically motivated as Trudeau is personally. I think that he's got a more pragmatic approach to things. The thing with Trudeau, I feel like, is nothing's done sincerely with him. Everything is a virtue signal. Everything is just for show. He doesn't actually believe in anything that he says he believes, right? I don't know. I can't see that in any of Trudeau's actions. With Carney, I don't know. All the things that I've read from him and seen him say they're saying that we need to increase our exports of oil and stuff and diversify the market we're selling it to. So, I don't know. I feel like him and Poilievre are running almost the exact same campaign right now.
To be the Liberal leader, who are moving away from the carbon tax in some form or another, even though, I'll give it to the Conservatives who are saying that Mark Carney is still somewhat wedded to it.
I haven't finished the book. No, me and Justus are both reading it, though.
What does this mean for that argument as they go forward?
Well, it's an interesting point because right now we're in a world where it looks like consumer carbon pricing is going away no matter what. Most of the Liberal candidates have said that capital gains is probably going to go away.
I feel like Carney's 100 times better than Trudeau. I don't know how you could possibly think he'd be worse.
Agrees affordability is the main issue. There's this huge rise in nationalism. All of the candidates are talking about bringing down internal trade barriers. These are all things that Conservatives have been talking about for a long time. And so if there isn't that policy differentiation...
I admit, Genghis, he probably did steal some of his platform talking points. It's not impossible.
Right now.
But if they're popular and people want them implemented, then why make that a dividing point, right? Why wedge people there? Why not say, hey, if you want this, I'll also do this, right? You can steal some of those supporters. That's the goal.
Really is a popularity contest. And at this moment, even Conservatives who say they're voting for Pierre Poilievre don't really seem to like him. And so where does that distinction
I don't think that's true.
He's,
all the Conservatives. Well, actually, no, you've seen people sour on them a little bit lately.
He also has a Trump problem, not necessarily from a policy perspective, but the way Pierre Poilievre has communicated really up until this speech on Saturday is like Donald Trump. And, he can slap on a red tie, he can trot out a new smile, but he is still going to have that shadow behind him.
No, he says in that interview that he was against the capital gains tax, and Trudeau did that. I don't know why Trudeau did that when he did, but he did. And apparently Carney advised against it.
Of talking about Canada being broken and Canada first.
No tax on chips,
kind
that'd
of
be
rhetoric
funny,
that Canadians right now seem quite allergic to.
And Alison, it's interesting because the Liberals are sort of on that track right now, but the NDP have been as well, trying to continually equate Poilievre with Donald Trump. And, we've seen a couple of attack ads come out as well. How effective do you think that'll be for the Canadian elector out there who might be starting to consider where they're going to place their vote, especially when you consider where Jagmeet Singh wants to go with his party? And, wants to really sort of place the NDP in voters' minds?
I think it will be effective. I think one of the biggest challenges that Poilievre has been in terms of his demeanor, as we just mentioned here. And so, I think this speech was interesting. It was probably the first time I've seen him be a little bit less immature and maybe rely a little bit less on ninth grade rhetorical devices and rhyming and a little bit more focused on substance. And I thought he communicated.
Sometimes it does.
I don't know how many of these we have. That's why I didn't want to skip too much stuff. But we got a few.
Threat to remind us what we have, what we could lose, and what we could become. The unjustified threats of tariffs and 51st statehood of Donald Trump have united our people to defend the country we love.
I think it's fine to hear these people out. I mean, it's good to at least hear the talking points, hear how they rationalize their opinions. I always think it's interesting. I mean, sometimes it gets tired if you already know, but...
In a campaign-style speech on Saturday, Poilievre laid out his party's plan to put Canada first and fight back.
I've still yet to hear anybody, I guess we're past that point now, but when Trudeau was still running, I was like, is there actually people out there who are strongly in favor of this? I don't understand the rationale there, right? And yeah, if I can't win the argument, I hit with personal insults. True, eh?
Back against potential tariffs, but Conservatives still have their fists up.
Yeah, I think it was a good speech. I think he did a good job. I think he said everything he needed to say. I think he's the America stuff. He doesn't really have a choice here.
It's one particular leadership candidate.
Trump wants our jobs.
We're going to take other countries' jobs.
Oh, thanks, Silver Fox. Thanks for the sub.
And Mark Carney is just the man to help him.
Yeah, I'm the conservative and the liberal today.
Trudeau and Carney sold out Canada with job-killing taxes that push jobs south.
The Liberal Party is also sharpening its attacks against Poilievre, putting out ads like this one.
Everything is broken.
I thought this was a good one too. I think both of them. I think that Pierre's saying everything he needs to say, tying Carney to Trudeau. That's what his main goal needs to be, just making them two heads of the same dragon, right? That's what he's trying to do. That's strategy wise, that makes all the sense in the world to me. And I don't know if this works so well. I feel like this thing that they're doing here is kind of what the Hillary Clinton campaign did to Trump in 2016, and that didn't work very well. This whole idea that everything's okay and it's not actually broken and we don't need to fix anything. Has that ever really worked out for anybody?
Is broken.
Because obviously Poilievre's hitting on something here, right? If he's able to say that things are broken and he's getting support, then maybe people really do feel that way, right? Maybe you should listen to that.
Fake news.
Fake news.
The left-wing censorship regime.
Their woke censorship ideology.
So, Rob, you were saying earlier you don't really see a pivot from Poilievre, but
I would call it an evolution.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think Rob, he's been thrown off a lot, I think. I don't think they expected this Trump stuff to go so hard right off the bat, right? He had a layup in front of him. I really do think that if Trump had just not been so aggressive right off the bat, we might have just had a Trudeau Poilievre election, and Poilievre would be, if not already, if we weren't already in an election campaign, we would be soon, right?
There was no Canada is broken on Saturday night, right? There is Canada.
And no axe to tax. But I must say, as the scribbler here and the one who never had a party membership card, it warms the heart of my bottom to hear everybody say, on the opposition side, say how terrible Mark Carney is. Paul Martin brought him here, a Liberal. Stephen Harper promoted him. He's stealing votes from the NDP.
Yeah, Genghis, I was saying, I don't think that they get any points for coming in and saying, oh, Poilievre's saying everything's broken, but we think everything's fine. I think that's the Hillary Clinton in 2016 strategy, and it didn't work out very well for her, right? So I don't think it's a good one. Carney is getting crushed in a general election. My only hope is that we get a majority one way or the other. Obviously, I like Carney better than Poilievre. I'm the liberal on the show. But if I was going to have either a liberal minority government with NDP coalition again, or just a majority of conservative, I would rather just have the majority conservative, because I feel like I really don't like the liberals when they're attached to the NDP.
And being attacked vigorously by the Conservatives. So I just wanted to note that, because it makes for great theater if you're a political reporter like like I am. Now, yes, let me explain what I was thinking. Mr. Poilievre had a kind of a difficult task on Saturday. He had to signal that there is a new reality, that the political terrain has shifted. It's changed. And he had to do that and address that with some new verbiage, new ideas, new posturing.
AJD says, I'm a bit uncomfortable with Poilievre basically ripping off Trumpisms. Trump could have negotiated instead of using a sledgehammer against everyone right off. Yeah, I think that Poilievre takes little bits and pieces from the Trump stuff, right? He's very good at weaponizing kind of this like energy of animosity towards the media, this idea of the people speaking up against the elites and the establishment. And he also does the nickname thing, you know, carbon tax Carney. But I don't think that he's ideologically in line with Trump very much. And I think that even if Poilievre comes in, he's not going to have a great time dealing with Trump. I can't see a situation where he's not either forced to concede things to Trump or he's constantly fighting with him, right? Like, what's the strategy there? I don't think that Trump has Canada's best interests at heart. I think he only has his own country's interests at heart, as he's been saying, right? Hurricane says, Saul, after reading Sam Cooper's book, I think there is something Trump is pointing at. And I hate to even say that because I hate Trump. I haven't read any of Sam Cooper's books. I've read a lot of his articles and I've listened to him talk a lot. All I would say, I think Sam Cooper's like a sincere guy. I don't think he's spewing stuff that he knows is wrong, but I think that guy has been put into a corner right now where he's very, very suspicious of a lot of things. And I don't know, I would just make sure you're like looking into the underlying facts that he quotes in the book. Just make sure you're like double checking to make sure that he's kind of presenting those things in a way that isn't maybe a little bit skewed in the direction to make his point always correct.
Without swallowing himself whole. And he had to do that in a way that would allow.
Is that true, Rob? Was he carbon tax Carney in the UK too? I'd never heard that.
Him to cut some campaign ads. Like that rally was made to cut campaign ads. Sure. Okay? Ginny's absolutely right. We could be in a campaign in a few weeks. So you know that ads were cut out of certain parts of that speech. You know that the red tie was no accident. You know that the red badging in front of the spectrum or the
Sorry, I just saw something I wanted to respond to. And I lost it. A lot of corruption is being... no, I don't know. I don't know what it was. Never mind.
The lectern was no accident either. And you know Canada First.
Oh, Genghis in here saying he wants us to get control of our BC ports back, but not saying it publicly. Kind of classy, actually. I don't know, man. I'm past the point. I for a long time, I thought maybe Trump was a lot smarter than he was letting on, and that there was some kind of strategy to the way that he was doing things. I mean, that ended for me before he won this last election. But there was a point where I did give him that good faith. I don't know. I don't know if this guy has anything, like any kind of grand strategy. I think he just kind of goes in there and does whatever. And usually it works out for him because he's pretty lucky. The guy's lucked out a lot in his life.
There's no accident. That's the evolution, as is I think the tougher tone and the more patriotic tone on protecting Canada in the face of the Trump threat. But I was surprised at how vigorously he went back to some of the things that he's been saying all along, particularly on patriotism. I think that there's the sense that the Conservatives had allowed the patriotic issue to go back to the Liberals. So he underscored some things about the passport, about citizenship ceremonies being in person.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I just don't see, like, do you guys see strategy in him saying that he didn't know if China was a part of BRICS? Like, where's the strategy there? Is he tricking them into thinking he's stupid? Like, C in BRICS stands for China. What are we doing here? You know, like, what's the point of that? Is there like a strategy there, or is he really just not really know what he's talking about?
So that was interesting. I was very surprised that he went back to being as tough as he was on the border and fentanyl, because I'm not sure that that's what people want to hear right now. There is a growing sense that we're doing more than an adequate job of preventing things from coming across the border. I would suggest our government is not doing a good enough job of preventing crime, guns, drugs from coming north. I would suggest that's the problem, and that's a U.S. problem.
Yeah, I just did that story last week, actually. Ginny, You know, it's true. I remember Poilievre talking about the indignity of stripping Terry Fox out of the Canadian passport at the Conservative Convention in Quebec City. In fact, that probably got the biggest applause line of that speech back then. And just because you attack the Liberal government doesn't mean that you're attacking.
This is like, where is the strategy there? I don't know. I just don't see it.
The country necessarily. I take that point. I mean, maybe he just wants the country to be better because he loves it. I mean, I hear that. But you can't deny that there has been at least the perception of a tonal shift. And it's not just me who's saying. I mean, the New York Times, they had a piece on this actually in their paper today.
Yeah, Hurricane, isn't that usually just not saying anything and letting the other person talk, though? Like, is just pretending, or no, I don't even know if that, because how do you know he's pretending? How do you know he wouldn't just say afterwards, oh yeah, I was just kidding? Like, I don't even know how you would figure that out afterwards. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I'm past the point where I can give him that kind of credit, I guess. I don't know.
And their headline is Trump's threats against Canada upend Conservatives' playbook. And you're actually quoted in that piece, Ginny. I mean, is there something underway here? I mean, there obviously is some sort of difference to what he's offering voters now than there was, say, back in October of last year.
I mean, any good politician is going to link their principles and their policy program to the events of the day, of course. I think that's what you saw today. I think Rob's analysis of the campaign tactics are apt. I'm sure we'll see footage of what was quite a stirring look and feel for patriots who feel strongly about defending Canada right now.
Maybe. I had Justus say something kind of interesting to me earlier today where he said that I give a lot of people, like, I'm pretty good at being impartial on most people, but he thinks that I'm too harsh on Elon Musk and Donald Trump. And I think that, I just hope you guys know, like, I haven't always had this opinion, like this strong an opinion on these people. This is slowly over time. I've just gotten to a point where I'm like, I just can't with these guys anymore. Like, they're either stupid or they're intentionally, Elon, maybe he's pretending to be stupid on some of it. That's possible. Trump, I don't know. I think he just kind of is stupid. That's the impression that I'm getting at this point. After watching him for so long, I just don't see it being some kind of strategic thing.
But really, Poilievre's biggest strength is his consistency in his principles. I worked on his leadership campaign 2.5 years ago, and we were shooting videos about Wilfrid Laurier and what it means to be Canadian. This is a guy.
Some of his interpretation of the data that he's been publishing on X, like, in my opinion, from what I can tell, it seems like somebody that doesn't really know what they're doing and just thinks like it's like Dunning-Kruger effect, where they think they can solve all these problems because he's good at one thing. Like, he probably really does know a lot about engineering and stuff, but that doesn't necessarily mean he knows how to, like, read data that's been put into the treasury, right? Like,
I'm sort of obsessed with this question for
some of the stuff too. It's like, I don't know how you could think that you're the first person to ever look at this and realize that, like, with the people who were aged over 150 or something in the Social Security, like, those were people who just hadn't been removed from the system yet. They weren't still receiving payments, but, like, Elon's going on there and just basically making it out like over half of the people receiving Social Security are fake. Like, I don't know, man.
And I think he saw the opportunity on the weekend to say, okay, everyone in Canada is looking to the South. They're concerned. They're looking to their political options here. We've got a lame duck government, and people are sort of craving leadership in response to that. So let's bring to bear, let's remind people what we've committed to already: lower taxes, smaller government, better investment environment, more jobs. Let's remind people what the alternative is: a worse economy that allows Trump to take even more jobs. We've heard this from Carney. We know he wants another carbon tax. And let's remind them that I'm the one who has been talking about this approach and linking it to Canada's prosperity and success in a way that is, like, steeped in our actual history. And that does.
Karma says Trump has more luck than brains. That's what I think too. Yeah, I think he's just really lucky. There are a lot of fraudulent Social Security claims payments. I can imagine there being a lot of them, but I don't know about over half. That sounds insane. Like, that sounds like you're just not understanding what you're looking at. 150-year-old, 230-year-olds getting money. They're not getting that money, though. They're just in the system still. From what I was reading, I don't think that there's any cases of people who are over 150 years old still receiving Medicare or receiving Social Security. The American people asked for Doge, so be it. Why do so many people have issue with this? It's because there's 3 branches of government, right? Congress and the executive and the judicial are all supposed to be checks on each other, and they've completely removed Congress from the equation. The Republican Congress members aren't using their power at all. They could be involved in these decisions, and they've completely abdicated themselves from any of that responsibility. They're just letting Elon Musk and Trump do whatever they want, which is, I guess that's a mandate in some senses, but I feel like they've just removed any oversight from themselves or any ability to kind of check the power at all, right? Because he's ignoring the judge's orders as well. So it's basically like there's only one branch of government controlling everything right now.
Doesn't allow our statues to be torn down and our history to be rewritten, because if we're not strong on that front, how can we stand up to the provocations of a totally unpredictable Donald Trump?
Yeah, Poilievre even saying on Saturday he wants to put up new statues of Sir John A. Macdonald, right? He wants to go the opposite direction. He says there should be more memorials to people from, in our past, and that should be more prominently displayed. Vandana, do you think
I'm
that...
not even listening to what's left on this.
This patriotic positioning by Poilievre, does that suggest that they find that there is a vulnerability there? Like, do they sense there's a vulnerability? But also, how do the Liberals try and wrap themselves in the flag as well? Because, I was talking to a number of...
And one of the...
We do know that candidates had until...
$50,000. That is the highest... So...
Debates now.
And who know the rules.
You guys have anything in chat you want to watch? This was a playlist that was made for me. Saul. If it's the will of the people, then can't handle any more of this liberal. Yeah, I saw that. I've met plenty of people who are cunning and ambitious, who get ahead, but are as thick as a brick. I think there's people who are just really good at some things too. I think Trump's a bit of a savant. He's obviously really good at show business. Like he has a way with the camera. He's very charismatic. But they won in every category. LOL, time to work the mandate. I guess, yeah, if you want to just exclude the other 2 branches of government, but that's kind of what they were trying to avoid when they established America, right? That's just basically a king at that point. Watched Joe Rogan's brain dead takes on Canada recently. Yeah, he's, we're apparently a socialist country at this point, according to Joe Rogan. Which, I guess it really depends on your definition of socialism, but I definitely don't think that that's the case. Do you guys have anything else you want to watch? This seems like mostly the same thing. Canada stands at exit. Who's this one? Oh, Christopher Freeland. Holy.
Well, we're getting closer and closer to the date when registered Liberals will choose a new leader to replace Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Now, we've had leadership hopefuls Mark Carney and Karina Gold here in our studio. So tonight...
Yeah, well, O'Neill, that's kind of the justification that every dictator has used in the past, is that the government is corrupt and they need to completely rip it all apart and replace it with something new. And usually it doesn't go very well, right? I don't like people that come in and start ripping things up and destroying things. There's a reason that these countries are so successful, and I don't like the idea of just throwing out everything with the the baby and the bathwater, I don't think that's how you're supposed to make changes in a democracy.
We are delighted to welcome Christopher Freeland, former Deputy Prime Minister, former Finance Minister, some other high-profile roles. I want to thank you so much for making time for us tonight.
It is great to be here with you, Bruce.
Critics would point out, that you have been kind of shoulder to shoulder with Mr. Trudeau for his whole tenure, really, as Prime Minister. And it's clear Canadians are looking for a change. So why would they choose you to get that change?
Well, first of all, I will point out, Bruce, I was the one minister who had the gumption to resign.
Sure.
And that was a hard thing to do, and it was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason that I am here in Halifax talking to some great Liberals and asking them to choose me to be the next Liberal leader and the next Prime Minister is because we are at an existential moment for our country. I take the threat that Donald Trump poses to our country extremely seriously. It's actually the thing that really drove my decision to step down from government. It was the central theme of my campaign launch. And I know that at this critical moment, I am the person who can stand for Canada and fight for Canada. I have the experience, I did it before, and I have the guts to do it.
It is illegal, Luca. It is illegal for him to be going. The Doge stuff is illegal.
There's a whole bunch of things I want to ask you about Donald Trump and where that goes. But first, let's get into the...
Yeah, but if you run on something that's illegal, that doesn't just mean that you're allowed to do it because you won the election. That still means you need to work within the system that's there, or you're supposed to if you respect the Constitution at all.
The leadership perception, because what we're seeing is, what we're hearing from the pollsters is that your party is
I agree,
gaining
Northwest
ground,
Coast. I don't even know what the point
which
of
is
this
great,
is.
but it seems to be gaining ground if Mark Carney is the leader. So what do you make of that?
Well, I would disagree with that.
Yeah.
I think there is a whole energy, a new energy in the Liberal Party right now, and that is wonderful. We now have 400,000 Liberal members. That is a great thing.
Sure.
And I think what has really energized Liberals...
Doge going into the Treasury is illegal. They're not supposed to have access to that information. And you're not supposed to be able to pull funding for things that were approved by Congress. Congress is the one that's responsible to approve and rescind funding for different government programs and like laws and stuff, right? It's all supposed to go through Congress. It's not supposed to just be one person deciding everything.
is people are recognizing that this is such
auditing
a
the
crucial
government is
moment.
not illegal. No. There's just already methods of doing that, right? Elon Musk is going in there and publishing a bunch of stuff on X as damning of whatever stuff he can find, right? Even some of it's like it doesn't even look like it's actually what he's saying it is. There was one I saw where they were saying they gave $20 million to Reuters, the news agency, and it was actually Thomas Reuters, like a military contract that was awarded by the Trump administration in 2018
for Canada, and they are
the government programs are public domain. Most of that stuff that's being published on the Doge Twitter, I'm pretty sure is already accessible on the website. It's more about the actual information for the payments and stuff, like seeing all the back end stuff that's not supposed to be accessible to them.
Recognizing that our party is the party to fight for Canada. They're also recognizing, by the way, Pierre Poilievre is not the guy.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, but you're not supposed to have access to this like back end information on who's receiving Social Security and stuff.
Can do it. He is maple syrup MAGA. All he wants to do is imitate Trump. And I don't think Canadians trust him to stand up to Trump. And so I think that's giving us a lot of energy. And that's why I'm really putting myself forward as the person, as the woman who can do it.
Let's get in the weeds a little bit about Trump, because, and this is fascinating, he has said publicly he just doesn't like you. Now, under normal circumstances, that would be kind of funny, but this is a high
Surfs TV, eh?
I think that is the best campaign ad I could ever have. That President Trump knows who I am. He knows I'm a tough negotiator. He knows I got a great deal for Canada last time. I mean, remember last time he was president, he threatened to rip up NAFTA, and there was a lot of shouting, a lot of kicking and screaming, and at the end of the day, we actually got a better deal than we had to start with. He also threatened steel and aluminum tariffs and in fact imposed them on us in 2018 when I was in charge of leading Canada through it. And the Americans, a few months later, unilaterally lifted those tariffs. So I know how to get the job done. I know that it takes strength and a plan and fortitude. That's
Secular Talk, is that Kyle Kalinske? I always think that's who it is, but I don't know. Maybe it's not. Electoral safety stuff. I can't find anything on this. I don't know.
Who I am.
I don't know what they're talking
And that's
about.
why I'm the best next leader of the Liberal Party.
What do you make of his comments about annexing Canada? I mean, you know, the first term he was worried about getting reelected. This is it for him, presumably. So, you know, some of the threats are kind of off the table right now. How serious is he about?
Oh, I think that threats to our sovereignty we have to take extremely seriously. I don't think we can laugh this off as any kind of a joke.
Right.
The president has repeated these threats. He has said he will use economic coercion to force us to negotiate.
Right.
And I think we as a country need to be extremely clear that capitulation is not a negotiating strategy, that Canada is not for sale, that our sovereignty is not negotiable. And I have to tell you something else, Bruce, something like this is all very serious and kind of quite somber. what is really raising my spirits is how Canadians are responding to this, right? Like there has been just across the country this unanimous and spontaneous outpouring of patriotism and love for our amazing country. And Canadians are saying very clearly to our American
She'd get
friends and
crushed
neighbors,
in an election.
don't
I can't
push us
imagine her.
around.
This is, yeah. I don't understand. I've seen JJ McCullough. I don't know if he just like wants her to win the Liberal leadership, but he keeps on talking about it like it's like a two-way race between her and Mark Carney. And I just feel like it's like not even, I don't know how anybody could possibly pick her over him. Just seems like a no-brainer.
We're here today because
you guys love this guy, right?
Carbon tax Carney must come clean with Canadians about potential conflicts of interest and all of his business dealings. We're in a very interesting and troubling place for Canadians, with Carbon tax Carney having been a senior advisor appointed by Justin Trudeau to advise him, but done in such a way to shield him from all of the standard and customary accountability. Justin Trudeau gave Mark Carney all of the power and none of the accountability that comes with it. You look at some of the positions that we know Carbon tax Carney held at the same time, some of the decisions the Trudeau Liberals took. For example, the Trudeau Liberals changed
Is he reading up a
rules
teleprompter, does he
in
think?
such a way to that would benefit the bottom
He looks
lines,
like he
pad the
is.
pockets of mortgage companies, private mortgage insurers, like the one owned by the company Mr. Carney represents at the same time he was sitting in the Prime Minister's office. While Mr. Carney was chairman of the board at Stripe, Stripe was shielded from the government while they were gouging Canadians. This is the same problem we have with Brookfield trying to enter into a pension scheme with the Canadian government worth $10 billion to Canadians, while Mark Carney was sitting in the Prime Minister's office. The customary and normal accountability practices have been completely disregarded by Mark Carney. Now, he has claimed that he will make disclosures should he be successful in an election. But what that means is he could get through the Liberal leadership and through a general election, and it would be an additional 4 months before those disclosures were completed. All the while,
I don't know if it's a globalist installation. I think most people who are liberals would have voted for this guy anyways. He seems pretty in line with, like, he seems like an old school liberal to me. We'll finish this, and I kind of got to go pretty quickly. I can't stick around too long today. I just I figured, yeah, I'd come in for like about an hour and we could watch some stuff. Justus is a bit tied up today. I don't know if you have any questions or anything. Let me know.
Make decisions that would further enrich himself and call into question the normal practices that that prime ministers and party leaders are expected.
Trevor, he said he'd be, once he's nominated for party leader, right?
To follow. And while he says that he will make these disclosures later,
do you guys think that all politicians should release their taxes?
We know that he can't be trusted. Take, for example, this past weekend, where Carbon tax Carney says in French, while in Quebec, that an east-west pipeline would never be completed. But a week ago, speaking in English, while in British Columbia, he said that he would use emergency powers to push through significant projects of a national interest, like pipelines. Or take his position on the carbon tax. This is a policy that
I feel like if Poilievre said he would use emergency powers to get a pipeline started, everybody would think it was based, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
Championed and pushed and said that the government, the Trudeau Liberals had
I'm not a fan of the emergency powers stuff either, though. I think, like, I guess there could be a justification with the tariff stuff, but I'm not a fan of doing that. I'd rather them just do it the regular way.
Gone far enough with their carbon tax. A carbon tax on everything that raised the price of gas, groceries, and home heating, driving business out of Canada. Well, he first said that he would cancel the carbon tax, but then reversed himself and said he would bring in a bigger carbon tax, a shadow carbon price, he called it, admitting that it will raise the price on things like steel. Now, he's talking about raising the price on steel at the same time that the US president is talking about tariffing Canadian steel. Now, the impact of both the Carney-Trudeau Liberal tax on steel that he's proposing and the US president's tariff on steel would be devastating for Canadian workers and devastating for Canadian consumers, all at a time while Canadians are struggling to get by after 9 years of the Carney-Trudeau.
Luca, what? Come on, Saul. Jesus, what are you upset about?
Liberals. And I'll say one more thing. Carbon tax Carney is looking to lead the Liberal Party of Canada. This is a party that's been led by Justin Trudeau and a group of ministers who are known serial ethical lawbreakers. These Liberal cabinet ministers, who Mark Carney is going to put in his cabinet, have been found to have broken the very law that Mark Carney says he's going to follow. Canadians can't believe.
Can a party leader kick members of the party out? Like if Carney was to come in and just kick out a bunch of the people who he thought was corrupt, like is that something he could arguably do?
What Mark Carney has said, they can't trust him. He's just voluntarily like Justin. Thank you.
So is it Mark Carney that needs to change, or is it the rules? And if so, if it's the rules that need to change here, what would a Conservative government do to change these ethics rules?
Well, first of all, we're in a position where Justin Trudeau and the NDP Liberals have shut down Parliament. So we have no opportunity to use any of the accountability tools that are usually available to us, including
the idea for no power in the hands of the government just because. I just think that it's good for things to get passed through the House, like for it to be something that gets voted through and legislated.
Including committee. We have no ability to change the rules or change the laws because they've locked parliamentarians out of the House of Commons, and so we're left to deal with these rules. But they're insufficient because Mark Carney has been given the privileged role of serving as a senior advisor to the Prime Minister while they avoided the normal disclosure process. So we arrive at this place only because Justin Trudeau shielded Mark Carney from the
he did. He ejected Wilson Raybould and Philpott from the Liberal caucus. Yeah, so you can do that. Yeah, that'd be cool if you just did that.
Accountability practice. To be clear, the rules weren't designed for a situation like this and would need to be updated to reflect the reality that we find ourselves in. I don't believe that the architects of these rules could have imagined the lengths that Liberals would go to break the law as it had been and avoid the law.
That's what I'm trying to say. Luca, we were just talking about this with the Doge thing and you were saying it was fine. So if Mark Carney comes in saying he's going to use the emergency powers and he gets voted in, is that a mandate? Like, is he allowed to do it now? Because you were just arguing against that. When I said that, I said that they shouldn't unilaterally hold all the power.
As it had been created. And of course, Conservatives will have a common sense solution to ensure that, that in the future, we don't find ourselves in that position. But today, Mark Carney needs to make that public disclosure. And he can't wait until after the Liberal leadership. He can't wait until after the next election. He needs to do it now. He skated for far too long by avoiding the spirit of the law.
Why is it different in Canada?
As it had been written.
What I understand from what you're saying, basically, is that Mark Carney is not breaking any rules right now.
It just always sounds like it's one rule for Trump and then one rule for everybody else, or another rule for everybody else.
What you're saying?
It's absolutely unacceptable that we have someone who was allowed by Justin Trudeau, a serial ethical lawbreaker, a prime minister.
What rule is he breaking? Can you explain to us what rule he's breaking?
You were just defending it, though. You do care. You had an argument against it. You were saying that Doge had the mandate. They had the right to do that.
Prime Minister twice found guilty of breaking Canada's ethics laws.
What rule has he broken?
A Prime Minister who's twice found guilty of breaking Canada's ethics laws created a path for Mark Carney to sit.
Well, I would hope that he doesn't do that. I think that he's going to call an election right away. I think that's what he said he's going to do. If he doesn't, then I'd be really disappointed.
In the Prime Minister's office and to advise him.
That'd probably affect whether or not I would vote for him too. If he withheld on doing the election until dragged it along further than it needed to go, I don't think I would support him anymore.
All the while, he was making decisions that enriched himself and enriched his company. Transparency is required for Canadians. The rules as they exist today they don't go far enough to ensure that we have transparency. We've seen after 9 years of Justin Trudeau that the rules and the penalties as they exist aren't sufficient to deal with a Liberal government.
I don't believe in civil liberties. Why? The rules and laws are different. Yikes, a mandate is voted upon. Emergency powers can take away your rights. How is that anywhere to being the same? I don't want him to take away our rights with emergency powers. My understanding was that he was going to use it to put a pipeline in. That's what they were just saying. That's what Barrett just said. So that's what I was saying is if I feel like if Poilievre said he was going to do that, everybody would be fine with it. They'd be like, yeah, good. We need to get that pipeline in ASAP.
Who is content to break the rules?
Would we not support Poilievre doing that? Using emergency powers to get a pipeline in right away?
Avoid the law wherever possible.
I'd like to ask you about outsourcing. You've been on the committee hearings that have looked into these trends.
Yeah, I don't support the Liberals using the Emergency Act after the protests. I don't think that was good. I think they should have acted way before that. I think they let things spiral out of control, and I think it was a disaster.
The government has pledged in budgets to save money in this area, to cut back, and now the public accounts show that in fact it's a new high, nearly $18 billion in outsourcing last year. What do you make of that?
We've seen under the Carney-Trudeau Liberals a doubling of the more than doubling of the use of these outside consultants. And after Conservatives uncovered the...
yeah, see, that's all I'm saying, O'Neill. I appreciate I'm just saying to be consistent, because I'd be okay if Poilievre did that. I think at this point, it is a bit of an emergency, right? We have tariffs coming in from our biggest trading partner. I think it's imperative that we diversify who we're selling our resources to.
Gross waste and the insider dealings that has led to criminal investigations.
And if they don't need to use the emergency powers, then don't do it. But I think if it's going to speed up the process, then why not?
And charges being laid against some of these contractors, while the Trudeau Liberals had said that there was nothing to see here and nothing to worry about.
Yeah, I think if they're going to use the emergency powers for something that isn't actually an emergency and doesn't actually need to be passed, if they were to suspend people's rights, even if he was going to postpone the election longer than immediately after he gets the nomination, honestly, I think he should call it right away. I won't vote for him, right? That'll be enough of me to say okay, this guy's obviously power grabbing as soon as he can. And I don't want somebody who's going to do that in power, right?
The $60 million Arrive scam, they committed to Canadians that they would reduce and scale back the outsourcing that they were using for these type of consultants. I think they even spent tens of millions of dollars looking to have an analysis done by an outside consultant on how to spend less on consultants. Canadians aren't seeing any improvement in the services.
No, yeah, I completely agree, AGD. That's why I've said, because Poilievre says he's going to use the notwithstanding clause to lengthen the prison sentences for people who've committed really heinous acts, it's an easy thing for him to use. And some people would say that it's justified that we should extend those sentences as soon as possible. But you're opening the door. Now people can just use the notwithstanding clause to override the charter whenever they want. Because it's already been done, right? I just think it's breaking open the seal on something
that they're getting, or the service delivery from the government, waiting record lengths of time, even for something as simple as a passport. We've said that we will end the insider dealing, the favoritism, the enrichment of Liberals' friends and these consultants, and restore common sense to Ottawa. It makes absolutely no sense that they continue to balloon the spending against their own commitments to pare it down or to eliminate it.
Last question. Do you think unelected party advisors and unelected candidates should be subject to the same disclosure rules as candidates? What's the difference between Carney advising Trudeau and someone like Jenny Byrne advising your party's leader?
Okay, I'm happy to explain to you the difference between someone sitting in the Prime Minister's office and someone not sitting in the Prime Minister's office.
No,
So Mark Carney, who was sitting in the Prime Minister's office, was an advisor to Justin Trudeau, and at the same time that he was an advisor to Justin Trudeau, I listed, while you wandered off, I listed a number of examples of how his company benefited from decisions that the government that he was advising was taking. All the while, he wasn't being subjected to the standard disclosure rules that exist for someone who's advising the Prime Minister. Now, it's easy for Canadians to see why that conflict is something that we need to have rules to prevent, and the rules that existed, they went to great pains to avoid, including at committee, days and days across multiple committees of Liberals filibustering to ensure that Mark Carney, in his role as an advisor to the Prime Minister, who was not being subjected, who was being shielded from Canada's ethics laws, they also shielded him from coming to a parliamentary committee. It's absolutely unacceptable that they've teed this up to have him avoid the standard and customary disclosures, the transparency that Canadians expect and deserve from someone who says one thing and does another. Canadians simply cannot believe what Mark Carney has said, so we need these disclosures so Canadians can get the full picture about the conflicts of interest and potential conflicts of interest that Mark Carney has. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the questions. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
I'd like to hear more about what Mark Carney.
All right. Well, that was fun. Okay, guys. Well, I gotta go. Sorry, I had to cut it short today. Figured might as well do something. Carney is a weasel. Shouldn't be anywhere near power. Will be in operation shortly, Mr. G. Oh yeah. All right. Well, hey. Well, happy Tuesday, guys. Hope you've had a good one. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you guys bearing with my liberal nonsense. Yeah, have a good one.